Right, so I mentioned in a video yesterday that Starmer had scrapped another of his 10 leadership pledges over indefinite detention. Who'd have thought there was anything left of them by now? Surely he'd wrecked them all by now, but amazingly, one little nugget had remained intact, but he's got rid of that too now. That said, though, who'd have thought he'd already been off one of the 5 missions he announced just 4 months ago? Well, he has. His fifth mission on education reads to break down barriers at every stage for every child by reforming the childcare and education systems, raising standards everywhere and preparing young people for work and life. Well, childcare just went in the skip because of Rachel Reeves and her fiscal rules again. Standards she's set herself, which are arbitrary and completely meaningless, when it's always a political choice as to what you choose to pay for out of the public purse. Investing in the next generation and ensuring they get the best start to life is no longer an investment she thinks is worthwhile. For some reason, she thinks that backing kids and young families isn't a vote winner. I suppose it depends whose vote you're chasing, though, because if it's working parents, it's not their vote, clearly. Childcare costs have been crippling for families as they rise, some of the highest in the world, as places are always hard to find as well. And despite the Tories' weak attempt at encouraging people back into childminding with an offer of a cash injection, it seemed to be more about investing in Rishi Sunak's wife's shareholdings in such a childminding agency, rather than anything meaningful for actual real people. Labour's position from when Starmer made this mission in February to just yesterday was that universal childcare would be provided from the end of parental leave until the end of primary school. But it's now been watered down substantially, instead of looking at means testing it so that only poorer families benefit from support, which they now won't even guarantee to be free, tapering off costs depending on income. Means testing involves much costly administration, which will eat into any money allocated to this policy. However, a form of means testing already exists in that families on universal credit can claim back up to 85% of childcare costs. So why is it fiscally necessary to go even further? What is the point? Because it serves no useful purpose, this. But not only will they taper off support depending on income, they'll actually also remove support from those currently getting it, though unlikely to be those on benefits, because currently all families earning less than £100,000 are entitled to 30 hours free childcare. Labour will now take that away from some families to reallocate funding to those worse off. Austerity for some, courtesy of Keir Starmer, and all because Rachel Reeves has decided on a certain figure for childcare, not that they published it, limiting Labour's plans for public spending. It's all very reminiscent of the Tory shrink the state mantra. And if this is their thinking, pretending not spending on things the public needs is being fiscally responsible, they have no intention of being honest about how they're going to run the economy, and no intention really of departing from what the Tories do now: spend less and tax less and find something to blame people's hardships on that isn't them, be that Russia or global inflation or whatever comes next, as long as you don't blame those responsible. Of course, you can rely on somebody to come out and correct the record, and Jeremy Corbyn has done just that, saying there's nothing fiscally credible about keeping parents out of work by denying them the support they need. Universal childcare would boost the economy, raise educational attainment, and improve gender equality. Investing in our children benefits us all. Spending to invest as a country should, in its next generation, can never be a bad use of public spending, surely. How can it possibly be? Take Sweden as an example. 90% of working mothers there have their kids in full-time childcare from 18 months through to 5 years, attending early learning programs on average 33 hours a week. Compared to the UK, that proportion of working mothers whose kids are in full-time childcare falls to just 50%. And Starmer is suggesting that will be cut under him. His promised proposals to improve and expand delivery of childcare, making it universal, has not only been scrapped, but for some, it'll throw their lives into reverse. And for what? So Rachel Reeves can plead about being fiscally responsible. If she were any more stupid, she'd need watering twice a week. But as Corbyn said, there's nothing fiscally responsible in keeping parents out of work, having to stay at home instead to care for children, instead of being economically active. 32,000 parents left the workforce just last year to care for their kids because it worked out cheaper. As for anyone saying, well, if you can't afford kids, you shouldn't have them, an awful lot of people are making that choice. A shrinking population isn't a good thing, especially when it's so avoidable. A country as rich as ours, more than able to afford to pay for this, if those in charge would do what needs to be done and tax wealth to increase spending power from the public purse. Another of Starmer's missions, incidentally, is to have the highest sustained growth in the G7. But how can you when you're forcing people out of the workplace, as reneging on this will do, as backpedaling on it will do? Some parents are spending as much as 80% of their incomes on childcare these days. It is folly to not do something about that, but you'd actually make it worse for some. You're idiots. And to prove how idiotic it is, the Green Party crunched the numbers, and this policy would, according to them, cost net zero. Free universal childcare would cost £17.8 billion. According to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, in the long term, savings to the government would add up to some £10 billion as a result of this policy. Freeing more people up to work as it would increase tax revenue by £5.1 billion, according to the Institute for Public Policy Research, which would in turn reduce benefits paid out as poorer families work their way out. Isn't that what they always want us to do, work our way out of poverty? And the benefits would then reduce to the tune of £2.8 billion. All those savings add up to £17.8 billion, net zero. So it isn't fiscally responsible to axe this policy at all. It is utterly irresponsible not to spend to invest in this case, both financially and socially. So far this week, Starmer has let the Tories tear up democracy in the Lords by letting them functionally end the right to protest, shredded his pledge to parents on childcare, and decided compassion in migration means keeping indefinite detention and keeping Yarlswood Detention Centre open. And it's only Wednesday. How many more promises to the public can he break before this week's out? My political experience has taught me that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but it does give you a litany of unhealthy coping mechanisms and a very dark sense of humour reflected in much of my content. And when you've liked, shared and subscribed to the channel like a dog with a bone, I don't let shit like this go, you can watch this video recommendation here, where last week Starmer ditched the Green New Deal too. Is he now getting sponsorship from a skip hire company? Because all he seems to do is dump stuff these days. There's hundreds of other videos to see here besides that one, so do stick with me a while longer, fill your boots, and I'll catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.